Hang on here. I don't have audio. Can you hear me?
Oh, and I was
There we
muted
go.
too, so nobody heard that. So let's start over.
Oh,
Welcome,
you were muted. Okay, I
everybody.
was like, is this my station?
No, no, that was me. And okay, so we are back. It is the third stream of the night, and probably most likely the most important stream and the most important topic out of all of the ridiculous, crazy topics and discoveries and disclosure that I have the pleasure of being a part of, and that despite, well, the real discoveries, the real disclosure always can withstand scrutiny. And that is where like you also succeed, and why I take your work, your collection, and this so seriously, Mike, is that you look for the scrutiny, you're able to overcome it, and that you're back with even more evidences and discoveries to share with us tonight. And this stream was supposed to happen last night, sadly, but even better because now it's here right now, and you were able to create a couple of shorts that miraculously overcame the algorithms of suppression and went genuinely viral overnight and got 3.5 million views or something and counting on Instagram. And I credit your ability of being real artifacts and not stupid AI generated fake BS that is like 95% of the trending videos on TikTok and Instagram covering these subjects these days. And well, let's keep you trending and let's let you show off your immaculate collection and your new videos of the actual excavations, what they have found, and that it even includes some Egyptian sarcophagi in Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a real trek. The last 2 or 3 months, there's been a lot of real, just huge. Am I echoing?
You're good. We're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can
All
hear.
right.
I
Yeah.
can
So I
hear
had the wrong
you.
thing muted, so I was hearing myself echo. Anyways, yeah, we just yesterday I got a message stating that we found something sticking out of the ground. It looks like a pyramid, and this is about 1 o'clock. And a couple hours go by. He sends me another video. He's like, "There's something big. We can't move it. Usually stuff kind of moves and you can shift it around a little bit. Not the case here." And so 3 or 4 hours went by, and he sends me this picture, and I mean, just as obviously it's the thumbnail I think you have on here. It's just a large sarcophagus. It probably weighs close to 3 ton. They're estimating the pyramid itself weighs about a half a ton. Neither of those objects have been pulled out of there yet. The just the tablets that align this thing. That's the other bizarre thing that they found a lot of funerary type stuff where there's burials, but never have they found an entire floor, let alone sidewalls that are completely carved. I mean, the floor around that sarcophagus is completely carved with, I mean, an entire story. So a lot of people thought it was cement because of the gray color, but when you pull something out of the ground, the ground there is very soft. It's obviously
And lots
something
of
happened.
limestone throughout that area too that leaches through the ground and turns things gray over time as well.
Yeah, a lot of calcite, limestone, but mostly it's just there was obviously like some sort of volcanic eruption or a flood that hit this area. And Izukuku Mountain is right there. Tula de Allende is the seat of the mountain, or the city and the seat of the mountain. And so this
So
temple was
I just
created
have
at the
to
base.
quickly interject that it's most likely the flood, and that Randall Carlson has been putting forward a lot of evidence of literal tidal waves going over the mountains of the U.S. and North America, and that same tidal wave would also go over Mexico, and
Yeah.
that now you're showing the evidence of that mud excavating and what's buried beneath the wiped out culture from before.
Yeah. And you can see it too with the other pyramids in Mexico. Clearly, in the 1890s, when they found Chichen Itza and Teotihuacan, they were completely covered up to the top. There's pictures of it,
Covered in mud,
in
right? And with trees going, they were mounds not
Yep. And
pyramids,
and if we
but the
remember the how hard it was to get the soil fertile in Mexico and how much extra work they had to do, well, that's because there was this much mud that they couldn't even get through.
and
The
it's
roots, I mean,
salted mud as well, which poisons.
volcanic,
And that
likely
also
maybe. Yeah.
shows why Africa, the Sahara, in all the old maps, it's lush. There's rivers, there's civilization. Now it's desert and there's dried up salt pits everywhere. Salt water from the ocean poisons the plants, makes it unfertile. And it shows the same in Australia. It shows the same. Well, you got the Great Salt Lake of Utah and that whole area, and that's
Yeah.
just the key parts.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is when they're digging, they went down to about the 20-foot level total now in some places. GPR scans showed things, caves. There was caves found at the 16-foot level that I think I showed here about a year ago. And what's interesting there is working the way down to get to those caves, there's three ground floors. A ground floor is like I mean, it's structurally there, and so they did organic carbon 14 dates on the vegetation at each ground floor level, and they were all separated by thousands of years. I don't have the specific dates in my mind, but it was like 1,400 years, 2,800 years, and then like 6 or 7 thousand years onto the third one, which is interesting. With the stories of um, the fall of Babel, the flood, Gilgamesh, all these ancient stories that you have these kind of resets and timelines that shift in and out of each other. And I think that that's really um, something we have to look at is that there might have been multiple resets here. And we see these different
Right. So
species down in
that's
Peru.
fascinating. That is absolutely like you're actually getting the real evidence of what has been brought up a lot in the Tartarian research community, alternative history of multiple resets, and these maps that showing maybe only 500, 600 years ago was when it was like the pre well, there was larger land. It was potentially this younger Dryas event that they're saying is 12,000 years, but that could have happened maybe just 500, maybe 1,500, maybe a few thousand. And also that or it could have happened specifically in that 12,000, the younger Dryas could have been, and that it was these asteroids. But then there was so that would have just killed everything with these freaking going over mountain sized tsunamis that like so much die, and then that there would have been these other maybe not as like cataclysmic but still giant floods or just wiping out, and that it happens on a much more regular reoccurring process and timeline that we would like to admit. And it's
We see it in Egypt with the Old Kingdom and the New Kingdom. You see it in the Bible with the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there's somewhere that there was a change, right? Obviously in the text, but also and it seems like the biology that we're dealing with. And you look at the Nazca mummies, and they have about 1,800-year carbon dates on those, which is an interesting time period as well, because this is what 200 to 300 years after the death of
yes.
Christ. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting is if you read the Pistis Sophia, it talks about how Christ came back after his resurrection and taught his disciples. That's what this text is. It's kind of a hidden text from the Bible. The church recognizes it, but they don't advertise it. And what it says is Jesus's teachings. Well, if you read that book and think about that, now also the Mormon church, they also have a belief that Jesus came to America essentially, and that they
Yep.
found these gold tablets with Egyptian on them, and so there's the really interesting thing is the whole Egyptian thing. We have pyramids in Mexico, pyramids in Egypt, and then also this, and so I think that there's real definitive logic here that these pyramid builders were global, and they utilized these pyramids for more. I mean, with these scans underneath Giza that just came out, I don't know if they're completely accurate, but I do think that there is definitely something under there. People have been predicting that for a long time. These scans should just be reason to look, in my opinion. It should be very simple to do a core sample
100%.
and tell. And yet they won't do that. They just say it's all BS and try to sweep it under the rug. And I've got a bunch of friends who are really close into this project, and I've been showing them some of the stuff from Mexico and hearing some of the stuff that they found and have dealt with Zahi Hawass and the Egyptian government of how they're doing the same thing
Gatekeepers,
as Mexico. They're
gatekeepers,
gatekeeper. Yes. So it's really alarming to see that kind of scrutiny over there as well, and to know what we're dealing with here now. When I came into this, I was a complete skeptic. I didn't believe any of these items were real. How could it be? It's sitting here in my basement. This is not 10,000-year-old alien artifacts, right? I mean, didn't make sense. We've got Vadras and things here that you shouldn't have in your hands. This is what Zeus and Ninurta held in their hands, supposedly.
right?
So
Like the technology of the demigods, essentially. And this came to me not too long ago. Like it just the realization of when we reach this singularity, this quantum, whatever it's the Tower of Babel moment again, but it's also get ready for the return of the demigods, because that any life and that existence beings that are essentially eternal or like extended consciousness and whatnot, that once we connect to the everything, it's all going to reconnect. And it makes perfect logical sense with the quickening, the acceleration, and it all coming out, that we would start actually recovering some of their actual artifacts and technology and seeing it and starting to make sense of it all. And that no matter how uncomfortable the outcome is, or what this leads to, say, and like the supporting of like Anunnaki or like demigod aliens, whatever, but that it's an uncomfortable truth, but it's what the evidence keeps showing. And
yeah.
that when I first encountered the whole idea of Anunnaki creation and ideas, I'll never forget, like, it was one of my friends made a post on Facebook, and I like got triggered, and I like wrote some like freaking hate thing trying to debunk it back. And like Facebook instantly like made it go viral because it was like drama fighting stuff, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like, you reject it at first, you're going to fight it at everything, but then the more you look into it, and then the more collaborating evidences around the world throughout all the different researchers, finders, interpretations, and it just keeps happening more and more. And it adds to the Burrows cave, as well as, which has the other Egyptian Sumerian tablets in, I believe it is Utah, but could be Arizona. And then there
You're
is
right. Yeah.
another one right by there as well. Not the Lovelock, it's a different one. The Lovelock was giant. There was another one that also had these gold Egyptian style tablets. Then there's the
Mm,
Crespi collection out of
yep.
Ecuador with all the golden tablets showing the Sumerian, the Egyptian, and that there's also the documentation of Olmec and Aztec and Mayans with
They've got the
Egypt, and
handbag
back,
and the
back,
Olmec.
yeah, right. It's back and forth, and
King
it's all
Pakal's has
coming
the
together,
sarcophagus.
right? And yeah, so I'm gonna shut up and let you show this new thing, and it is straight up Egyptian.
One thing though, like, do you know where demigod comes from? Like the word demigod? I
Um,
believe they're an archon essentially that was created by the demiurge, and the demiurge is really interesting because I'd ran into this thing with the Cathar people where they believed that there was two gods in the Old Testament, or there was actually two gods, one that was evil and one that was good. And when I was working with Scott Woltar, the host of America Unearthed, there he gave a presentation on a lecture cruise that we went on, and during this presentation he explained the Cremona document, which is this document, a Templar document that was found in Cremona. And there was a whole cache of stuff, and it was all sold to the Vatican in the 90s. But the gentleman who found it and sold it to the Vatican for $250,000, he took the cryptics out, so they didn't have the coding of how to undo the language, because the Templars wrote in a secret language that
Of
required this
course, the
cryptics.
coding. It's all if you don't have the codex, it ain't gonna
Right.
mean shit.
So he took pictures of the real documents and then sent them with the real documents, but kept the codex for him with the pictures. And he waited, and he's on his deathbed, and he watches the Gaia Knights of the Templar show with Tim Hogan and Scott Walter or something of this nature, and reaches out to Scott or something. And there's a whole story here. I'm probably butchering it, but nonetheless, these documents made it to Scott, and Scott was able to use a different cryptics that the Knights Templar used on another thing, and he was able to figure it out and translate it. So, long story short, what it says in there is that Yahweh was a dual gendered Godhead. And so this is something that they're keeping from the church. You know, the Templars stayed in order because they had things over the church, and the church didn't want to let that out. So they kind of just created this equal force and stayed parallel, you know, and so seeing that dual gendered godhead thing, and this thing about the twin serpent lion faced one, the demiurge, and how all these gods were created. If you look at all these god stories in our history, they all have good and evil, and they all have trials and tribulations. If they're gods, wouldn't things just be easy for them? Wouldn't they not be dualistic like us?
So I have to interject one key thing that I have come up with that connects into my overall unified theory of everything is scalable dimensions. And when I use the term demigod, it is a scalable dimension of that it is one dimensional entity above us where it can extend itself and its consciousness through space time, and that it can also have the influence of influencing our genetic makeup design, essentially creating us, just like we are now using CRISPR technology to create whatever, and we are now the new demigods of Earth. And as we unlock this God code and God technology, we then are able to extend up to them, and that it's like then it's it's going to be expect the return of the demigods, because it's both going to connect humanity back to itself, that we have always had this demigod ability as us as well, of like telekinesis, extended life, and all these different things. But there's also probably these giants or titans or whatever the heck they are that were also the anamorphic figures
Yep.
aspect of it and whatever. But it's that there's this repeatable, scalable groups of like humans, of like birds, of like cats, of like dogs, of fish and stuff that goes out, and they've even done these scientific or processes proven it of being able to generate like DNA through photons and through specific frequencies, all these different processes, and that there was I'm can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'm gonna do an episode specifically on it, and I'll have the names and detail of it. But that one experiment where by altering a specific frequency into this process, that they were able to actually physically alter and change the eggs and the seeds of both a few types of plants as well as some
Wow.
fish and some frogs, where it reverted back to a previous older species of the animal that hatched from the modern ones. And it's like that right there, it just rewrites everything. But it's the aspect that there probably are or were giant humans and giant, we have
Nephilim
records of giant every animal else but humans, but
hybrids.
there are humans, as well as the hybrid gene editing like we're doing now. And that we now know that this gene stuff is all possible, that it's most likely we were gene edited as well by something and someone, and that all the evidence actually proves it undeniably. They just construed it so much and hide it from us, but there's no
Yes.
other logical outcome or understanding if you actually understand the Genome Project and CRISPR and
Chromosomes and
all of
stuff
it.
like that. Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
also why they now, when they they sell Neanderthals as this other freaking subhuman caves, weren't smart at all. But now they show their skulls, and oh, they're the elongated ones. So what they code as Neanderthal in the genome is actually most likely these elongated skull being ones. And the Desnavonians, you look at their skulls and teeth, and it's actually the giants that were like had the 2 rows of teeth bigger and even bigger than the elongated skull ones. And that, yes, that is how they hide it and put it in. And that, well, where did those things go? Are they still around? Are they off planet? Did we kill them all? Are there more elsewhere? All sorts of different possibilities and realities. And that we've been intentionally hidden and lied to of this reality. And I essentially believe it was for the aspect of humanity to have that third dimensional free will of like you the understanding, like we think we're YOLO, we're the greatest ever, we're the only ever, but that is a God mentality that then like, you know, gives you the ability to be like, hey, we can do anything and get anything, and then get back to this point that once we hit, well, there's going to be angels, there's going to be demons, there's going to be everything in between, and you know, we'll be able to interact with them, but they'll also be able to interact with this and our
Maybe
reality.
we already can. And look at Nikola Tesla and what he reported. Look at Aleister Crowley and the being that he encountered in Egypt, and look at the knowledge that they acquired from this. And then look at like Adolf Hitler and other people who were chasing the occult and certain things that revolve around this topic. It becomes a real plausibility. If you look at the remote viewers that just recently went and they were trying to find. Things about our origin and our source and this sort of thing. And what they kept coming to was this like brick wall. And it was like a machine, they said, that was creating some sort of field or force field that they couldn't get beyond.
I have
And
encountered that when I have been out of body, actually. And
same.
shout out to Julia, and she also gives her full encounter or encounters with it and experiences with it in some of her remote viewing aspects.
Yeah. So that I believe. So I just recently took a seminar by J.J. Hurtak, the author of Keys of Enoch, the Book of Knowledge, and he has a prediction or a theory or sort of a intuition that there's going to be, back in 2010 there was a CME that hit the Earth and it warped the magnetic sphere. Okay. And so his theory is that this magnetic sphere is actually blocking certain things from the sun. And those things are what charge us to become so like those things that you said earlier, like telekinesis and superpowers, right? All this magic and things that used to exist or that we've heard about or some
And what
people can
is
kind of
magic?
do.
Magic is technology to a lower technological understanding, and it always turns out to be that way. And that's what really is the mind fuck to me, when I really think about it right now, with everything we have just said, is that what was that magic technology that they all had back then? Well, it was the mana prana, the what
The mana,
the other,
the arcs. They use the
but
arcs,
no,
the
the
pyramids. It was
monoatomic
alchemy.
gold. The monoatomic gold. A lot they speak of these monoatomics and the different aspects of all these nanotechnologies, and that it's like if the legends of the monoatomic gold are true, especially with like the king's list, and if they were eating it and living for 500 or 1,000 years, and that I myself have discovered the new, easier way of making pure monoatomics out of any metal, and that it is this potential quantum demigod um, building blocks of life, reality, and everything else, and unlocking it. And that I suspect and I predict that as you get more results with your artifacts, and that they do prove to be genuine and potentially this demigod's level of technology that we're going to start finding a lot of these different monoatomic and nano materials and processes and technologies within your artifacts, and that it's also includes this geopolymer technology, that is how you mix and make these things, is from that soup, with including the monoatomic elements and these different nano elements within it, and where you get your phosphorescence, your different stuff.
Yeah. Well, the phosphorescence actually is coming from a stone. They crush it down and mix it with some organic materials. We might actually be able to get carbon dating off of it, some of it that's thick anyways. It's hard to get a quality organic sample off of something that's painted so thin, but nonetheless, we did find a whole floor of the stone. It matches the half-life, it matches everything, and it turns to a dust just by fingering it. Here, I can actually show you. I've got one over here real quick. Bring it in.
Yes, please. Oh,
Oh yeah, you had it. I'm sorry. I'm just walking over there, but let's see if I can hit this. You can see it maybe. Yeah, it's too bright on under this light, but yeah, this stone is just like a sandstone and can be crushed down, and so we definitely have a good idea of where some of it's coming from, but the reason why is still totally bewildering. We found I started to write another book, and this book's about the Miko-Con, and I actually came into contact with a tribe down there, and I did a video on my YouTube called the 10,000 Year Lie. And so very interesting, the stuff that they have. It's all out of serpentine jade, um, but we're finding crucified beings and the Lady Guadalupe and other things of craziness. But the carbon dates and the thermoluminescent dates on these pieces are like 1825 years plus or minus 125. So a lot of the pieces that we have carbon dates from are 12,000, 19,000. Some are 3,000, some are 8,000. So we have all these ranges that span, and there's definitely
I
eras
gotta
in
give
different
you a
places.
theory. I gotta give
Mhm.
a theory that kind of makes
Please.
sense out of this. Is this would make sense, and that uh, shout out Brian Forrester, all the work he's done with the genetic coding of the elongated skulls, and that he's also documented at around 1800 was when or 1800 years ago was when they took or left the Mediterranean and were wiped out from Crimea and throughout that region, and was the last of them, and that what the Crusades would have been is the hunting down and the murdering of the last of them
Nephilim.
finally, and
Yeah.
that these were the last genetic descendants between the what we are as the human like manipulated race and the original creator race, and that those were the legendary they're the descendants of them, right? Of the Oh, that would make so much sense.
We find a lot of human looking skulls, but they're very different down there. And some of them have two brain cavities, and these are bone skulls that I'm talking about. So what's interesting here is in the Miko Con, they have this museum with these 6 and 8 foot wide jade tablets with these scenes of creation on them. Some have Nefertiti. I mean, just the most bizarre things you've seen, Baphomet, stuff that I would never have bought into if I didn't know what this was and how.
Sorry, just to quickly answer this question, what I'm proposing is that the elongated skulls, and that some of the original, and I think it was Rest in Peace and his like founding instrumental work in these different humanoid and potentially alien skulls and the elongated skulls and whatnot, is Lloyd Pye, and that the first genetic test Lloyd Pye had gotten returned, I believe it was 50% human DNA and then 50% like non-existent in the Earth
Yes.
gene database, right? And it's like we have more genetic percentage connected with a banana. I think it's like 51 maybe, or even higher, right? But it's like
Yeah.
more in genetic coating with a banana than with these half human elongated skull things. So that would make sense that it was when the original, so it's the elongated ones are the descendants of the when the gods, so the demigods that created the worker slave humanity thing and then had children with them. Those were the children, and that's why there was the king's list of these supposed children of the gods, and that wiped out by us, and that potentially the gods inhabited our Earth physically up until the Younger Dryas catastrophe, and where they're saying it's comets that wiped it out. Maybe it was a like literal some sort of intergalactic war where they nuked like whatever created us, but it's when everything that was giant died and massive floods and everything, and that the then survivors were the ones that had bred with humans and were part human, but we didn't have any of the interactions with whatever the giants. I don't know.
See if I can show you this here. Might be too small.
Here, I will fully highlight and I will let you go through everything and stop interrupting. And yeah, like, and there's so much of Thoth and of the Egyptian main creators and all the alchemy. And one of,
So
through all my
see
research in
this here.
alchemy, sorry, continue.
All right. So this is like the story here. We've got these squid-like amphibious beings. These are what the Dogon talk about. The Nomo, possibly. This could be the creations of them, the evolution. See how the face is pretty similar, but they evolve away from these tentacles, and then you all of a sudden get these very small beings here. And if you look up here, it shows a three-fingered hand, which is really interesting because of the Nazca mummies are three fingers, right? And then over here, you've got these planets, and like this one here is being destroyed. So is that Tiamat or something in our galaxy, like you say, an intergalactic war, possibly? You know, it shows these
No doubt.
pyramids with UFOs on top of them. Um, Down here, we've got, you know, the bird guy with the DNA. So this tablet's really fascinating. It's got a ton of information, but the fact that it shows these different beings like this here, I mean, this guy's super tall, but he's more humanesque. So I believe this is their creations before us. I think that there was a many creations that they had that were failed experiments. As in the Bible, it talks about one of the reasons for the flood was that they had a lot of corrupt genetics through the Nephil mutations, and they flooded the earth to get rid of them. However, in Genesis, it does say that there was Nephilim on the planet after the flood as well. So I think that that is really something that we have to look at, because in the fall of Babel happened because they worshiped their gods with stone idols. That was one of the reasons. And so likely we're looking at those stone idols that were utilized to worship those demigods versus the real God, and that's where this whole thing comes into play. The demiurge was created by Sophia, and the Sophia was a direct emanation of thought that came out of the source. So if you look at this on a lot of these, you see these beams or these rays coming out of this. This is a better
Yes,
one here. You can
I
see the
love
five
that
emanations, right? Five
source.
emanations that are feeding the pyramid eye, which then feeds the pineal gland. And so this source emanates its thoughts, and out of those thoughts, the Sophia, which is wisdom, she didn't use her partner. See, all these thoughts were created in pairs, and they were supposed to create new realms and new universes in pairs, so it balanced out these universes. But when she created the demiurge, she did it by herself because she had lost faith in that her partner was going to come back and mate with her or create with her. And so she lost faith, is what the story says, and in the Gnostic. And when that happened, she fell to Satan, and that's when she created the first demiurge or this being, and when she created it, it was all out of balance, completely messed up because it was just her genetics doing it. And so she was ashamed of it. She hid it away in this place, and that's where we're at now. That's where our universe was created. The demiurge likely created in this universe, and then all the archons from him, and that's why they're, the archangels and the archons and things of that nature were created after the creation of the demiurge. And she never taught the demiurge how to be a god whatsoever. She was just ashamed and hid him away and abandoned him. And so this talk about the demiurge and the guise of the demiurge keeping us all slaves here on this planet from Yao the Baoth, it's really an interesting thing, because if you look at this magnetic sphere that was warped by the CME, and you think about this, okay, well, maybe our powers are being limited. Maybe we are being held at 10% brain capacity because the 14 volts or whatever we have when we're a baby, it starts decreasing as we pick up knowledge and information. And the further we go in life, the less we have. And so maybe we need more power and we're not capable of achieving it from the sun. So we're deficient. And I think that's kind of why the guise of the demiurge is what it is, and why some people claim that, stuff like cannabis or something like that, plant medicines can free your mind, man, because we're actually in this enslaved, constant reincarnation cycle. And in order to break free, you have to break the seven seals, break the seven sins, and ascend, right? And without doing that, you can't do that. That's why Jesus had to train, why the Buddha had to train to get enlightenment. And so I think that's where we're at in this entrapment. So when the magnetic sphere hits, I think we're going to have an opportunity, or when it warps next, we're going to have an opportunity to possibly, push that. But it's also going to give, like you said, these beings the attempt to return, and that might be an ugly thing based
So,
on what Revelation says, right?
so Wawawiwa, and to connect that into the Mayan prophecy, the back tune 2012, 2001 was the first year of the solar cycles where the sun did not do its 11-year magnetic flip. Instead,
Right.
it pulsed a little bit and it grew a little bit. And then 11 years later, the next, what should have been the next magnetic pole flip of the sun, again did not happen. And again, it just pulsed a bit more. And then
Mhm.
in 2023, we were too distracted with getting over COVID, but it was not mentioned that the sun did a pole flip, and it did not. And now they're talking about, oh, we don't know what the sun is in. It's in a next solar maximum. Like maybe in
Bingo.
40 years it's going to do something. It's like, what do you mean 40 years? It's every 11 years it's supposed to flip
It's going
its
to happen in
pole,
July.
but it doesn't do that, and it's now being seen as white, no longer yellow. What is white? White is the full spectrum of light, and it's pulsing. Our sun has just taken into the new sixth or fifth age of man, is a white pulsar. It is no longer that yellow little brown dwarf. It is literally turning into this white pulsar, and it is giving us a full spectrum, but it's giving our whole solar system a full
Yep.
spectrum. Was Tiamat, was Marduk like the home planet of potentially one of our demigods or something? And like, there's a lot more to the wipeout that happened, and
Yeah.
that is this Nibiru that's way out there. It's also going to be connected back in, but it's like we've always been like psychically connected into all of it, and that now we're all going to be fed from that same source. And I love that it
Yep.
shows the source and the source consciousness, and everything I have ever channeled or gotten, it's connecting to source. And that
Yeah.
when you get the source downloads, that is source consciousness, that is creation God, and we are a fractal of that God. And that is why they hid since the end of their interactions or whatnot. Humanity's true history is giving us that third dimensional sovereignty between us and our God, realizing, living as that we are the only thing, thus we are God. And then when we get reconnected with the demigods that created us and can now be re-interacting with them, but we're now as equal demigods with the different weapon technologies and everything else, where it's like we're not just these slave apes, we have other weapons that can also wipe it out. And that's the whole thing, right? It's gonna be
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, I think we've been upgraded. I think that the Ascension and the Easter, a lot of people say, "Oh, Easter is a pagan holiday." I always hear these things come on social media, and the reality is Easter is Ishtar because when he resurrected, it says in the Pistis Sophia, he took the power of the fallen by one third. Well, how did he do that? Well, remember earlier I was saying that they when the Sophia fell and hid him away. Well, she left, and when she came back to check on him, he trapped her soul, and then he then had the Trinity power and was able to abuse her and into creation. And so that's where all these creations came from and why they were just abusing it. And so if you look at that Pistis Sophia story, um that's the resurrection. When he died, he went down and punished them or took their power by one third. And it also says that she went with him and he hid her away. And so that might be why we have remote viewers viewing this star system, quite a few thousand light years away, where the souls are traveling when they die, because she may be hid away there. And if that's the case, we absolutely might actually be seeing evidence of that with this star system that they remote viewed.
And like then it's like from different levels of these what is called demigods and different things, and that that there could be these Palladians or all these other different star system like humanoids, things that could have came and seeded the whatever the giants or the titans were from, that used to inhabit Mars with its pyramids, that used to be
Right.
on the Tiamat, the fourth planet that is now. Why does the asteroid belt not fit into any model of trying to re-render what happened? That's because it got blown up and was a planet. That's why it doesn't add up. That's why there's
Right.
all of these little small microplanets. Oh, those were its moons. And, so for all we know, all these creation stories are true of these, what we call aliens coming, and that they could have seeded whatever demigods were somewhere else in our solar system. And then it was
Mhm.
those things that then created us here, and that those things got wiped out. Who knows? Like, it would have been a war of gods, essentially, the war in the heavens. And
Let's see if I can find a piece. So on these pieces, here we go. You can see that there's Saturn on all these things, and we found that Saturn is likely the demiurge. And so Saturn worshipped in the Roman, all this, they were worshiping the demiurge. And so when you look at the Romans and how they became Catholics overnight, yet they inherited a lot of things, likely that's how they could keep the demiurge worship alive. And that's why a lot of people think that the Catholic Church is satanic, because they probably worship a being that was fallen to Satan as their God rather than the source itself. And that's a sensitive topic, and I'm not trying to get too far out of here,
oh,
out of line, but
but
nonetheless,
hey,
it's an interesting
that's
turn.
key. That's
It
key
is.
because
It is.
they interject between the individual humans' sovereign right, right? They take that
Mhm.
sovereignty away. So that's humans enslaving humans and giving taking away the individual's connection to God, and then feeding it and enslaving it to
Bingo.
energetically the source that is still suppressing us, right? That's
Yep. And that's why I keep going back to that demiurge story, and why I've researched it so heavily, because it is it's why the Cathar were completely genocided. Probably it's why the Crusades and all this stuff seem to be so ridiculous in terms of violence and gruesomeness. It's like, to go in and colonize people and convert them to Christianity. How how does this have to destroy everything and melt everything that they believe down, but seeing this now, this is what they were melting down. This is what they were hiding when they went there. Um, it wasn't the stuff in the museums.
You've got a question in the chat, and I personally hope you would live stream yourself returning it to them, but making sure you're allowed to live
Let me read
stream
this
the
here.
return of the demigods. And
Oh,
oh my God, Mike, are you going to be the first human to have an interaction when the return of the demigods come when they demand their artifacts back?
I believe that these artifacts are not the demigods per se, but these were the stone idols made to worship them, and that the demigods would come into these places. And when they did, I believe that these pieces glow. I haven't showed this tonight, but I'll flip my lights here so you can see it. All these pieces have luminescent properties. So why, right? But if these demigods were
I
real,
love this part because it ties into the shining ones
yep,
and how they fit into those same roles, as well as the fact that in all the pre-Catholic, the old Eastern Orthodox paintings, there's the halos above all the saints, and does
bingo.
that show them making these glow and the authenticity that you've got this archangel between. And then another one subgroup that fits into my definition of demigods would be the archangels, but they might even be one class up above. They're most
Yeah,
likely
I
above
think
that
so
where
too.
they're plasma etherical and like just one or two steps below the overall God creation that is like the plasma everything, right?
Well, and so the one that confuses me about this is if you look at Gabriel and the Islamic faith and how that all happened and how some of these beings were tricksters and stuff. I mean, obviously Michael's one thing, but you have a lot of these other guys too. So my theory here is that these archangels, like you say, are these you know luminous beings or light bodies or whatever you want to call them, right? But they can inseminate themselves into this reality and inside of this reality because the demiurge was created without balance. Everything in this universe is attempting to be like God or attempting to be in balance. That's why nothing we have, no square is perfect, no circle is perfect. Like everything is fudged no matter how hard we try in this universe. So taking that grain of salt, and okay, if you're a god and you take yourself and make an avatar of yourself inside of this universe, now you're also dualistic. And now you also have to face the same challenges of being trapped that everybody else faces. That's why in the Bible, Jesus comes down and performs the exorcism of 7 demons, which is one for every chakra, one for every seal, one for every sin. And once those are exorcised, that's when he dies and goes down and gets her and frees her.
I freaking love how it just keeps all tying together. And yes, you literally, Mike literally has what is probably most hidden in the Smithsonian as well as the Vatican, and that yes, he has the real Indiana Jones collection in real life, and he's even going to show some video of them digging up more of it, and it's just
Yeah, it's so exciting. So this discovery we post yesterday that went viral, it's not just these two little 2-minute clips, it's a lot more. We had 8 hours of footage, and so it's going to take some serious effort to go through and edit that over the next few days. I was literally mid drift in an 80-minute long documentary that I've been working on putting together. So there's going to be a ton of content coming really, really soon, and I'm really looking forward to it because this discovery has a lot of room to resonate, I think, with people as it's. I mean, uh,
it just keeps on coming and it
yeah,
just keeps getting dug out of the literal ground from the dried mud that was whatever floods and cataclysm clearly wiped out this previous advanced civilization that we are the descendants and the leftovers of, and that it looks like, and it's documented in the fossil and genome records that there were these other humanoid or homin, whatever the F, but as well as the megafauna, the giant everything, and
Yeah.
that, it's, there was
Well,
giant humans too. There was elongated ones. There was all these others, and all the creation myths and
you've got
legends
the ant
coming
people,
true.
you've got all these griffins and chimeras and manticores and homunculus and all these different creations of alchemy or creations of mythology, right? And I think that there's real important knowledge there because it's just like God being in every culture out there. It doesn't matter what God you believe in, every culture out there has a God for the most part. And I think that's really important because as we were talking, the source versus this demiurge veil, it would make a lot of sense why a lot of people are trapped in dogma over the veil of the demiurge when it was much simpler, and why also maybe the
Oh,
truth shall set us free because Mary, she had to undo those seven seals. So if we overcome our seven sins, just like the Buddhists and Tibetan monks that turned to stone, then we might actually be able to ascend, and that might be why the pyramids were used. These pharaohs may have known how to do this to where they
they
could switch
definitely were the descendants of the mixture of the gods and the humans, just like they say,
right.
and they were the elongated
Oh,
ones. And boom,
I
what
got one.
about that? The ending of or when Moses took out and went from the many to the
Exodus
one, the Exodus, exactly. And that's the time frame that the elongated skulls disappeared from
and the
Mediterranean,
age group
disappeared
changed.
from Egypt,
Moses was what,
everything
1200?
were wiped out. And it's when they went to the New World, and then they got
Yeah,
wiped out again by the conquistadors, which was led by the Jesuits, which is the military order of the Roman Catholic Church that now controls everything.
right.
And boom, there it all
They
is.
took over the world. Rome took over the world. They're still in existence. They're likely still here, and they still are probably bringing into this. Now, it's absolutely crazy because we find, in the Roman Catholic Church, prayer beads are very unique, as well as the Holy Ghost title. And so again, they're trying to suppress the feminine, suppress the Sophia story because they don't want people to help the
She's
Holy
the main
Spirit. They don't
creator
want us
in
to
our
overcome it,
lives.
right? Right.
That's right.
And that's why White Buffalo Calf Woman's here. That's if you look at Chris Bledsoe's story, the lady in white, and what she told him, highly encourage watching that Sean Ryan interview because I truly believe that there's something to that story. And yeah, the whole white buffalo calf woman thing has come up a lot. And the Lakota tribe and their beliefs, they used to do a thing called the sun dance, and that was banned by the federal government, and it involved fasting. And if you look into fasting in Egypt and the cult of the moon, which is Thoth's cult, they would also do certain fasting
And
practices as well.
Islam
Yeah,
still do. And to my
right.
Islamic friends in that do Ramadan, they do experience more psychic connections, more
The
source
chin,
connections, and whatnot, as well as they recognize the jinn, the opposite
right?
side. And also, there's the Eastern Orthodox that also fast for that same month,
Yep.
but like,
If you look at the genie, which is inspired by the jinn on Aladdin, you take the genie with the little wispy tail coming down, and you put that up next to one of these elongated head beings that we have on these pieces, you're going to be in for a treat because it's almost identical in terms of the way the wispy tail comes down and everything. So we definitely feel that the jinn have a strong connection here. I worked with an archaeologist that approached me back when I first started doing this, and she told me that she had worked in Saudi Arabia and underneath the sheik at the temple there for 14 years. And he was very impressed with her work and gave her a full ride, whatever she wanted to do. And she wanted to go deep into Egypt and into Petra, so she was allowed, even though most people weren't. And um, so, when she did this, though, she left. The jinn put, or the the jinn, the sheik put a jinn to follow her. And when she contacted me from a private number. It sounded like a payphone. I mean, I didn't even know these things still existed, but I could hear, cars and stuff going by, and she disconnected. She blocked me off all social media, never talked to me again. She was scared to death to even tell me what she told me, and she was very limited. But looking back now, I can see that there was probably really something there.
right? There's only two reasons people will not come up It's one, they are either they can't handle scrutiny, or two, they have literally, like, they have the fear of God and know that the imminent
Fear.
death if they speak on it, right?
Yep, attached to physical sin. I mean, we're everything here is sin. So if you're attached to this world, you're in for a surprise probably. We're better than that. And I mean that in the like least disrespectful way possible. I love this world and I absolutely appreciate the beauty and everything that's here. I think that even if Satan created this world, Satan's still a direct thought of God. And the source
Right?
created the wisdom, and the
And is
wisdom
Satan one of
created the Satan.
humanity's seven original sins potentially?
Right.
And I personally believe, like, this third dimensional realm that we are, it's that we have both an angel and a demon within us, and that the third dimension is your sovereign free will choice of, are you going to feed the angel, or are you going to let the demon loose and burn everything down, or are you just going to use your free will to surrender your third dimensional and your fourth dimensional, your quantum consciousness, and all the abilities of being a demigod consciousness and eternal spirit, and suffer down into just the two-dimensional good,
Or
evil, action, reaction, and that's all you are. And
I want to correct one thing there that you said. I
please
feel
do.
this is really important from my research is that we are not of the demigod energy. We may have been created of the demigod energy, but when the intervention occurred, when Jesus came down here and did genetic manipulation on our species to give us the divine spark, to give us the one-on-one connection with God, to where we don't need to go to the temples and we don't need to depend on the priests and so on. That was also the shifting change, and I feel that that's likely an upgrade to us, which gave us more of the source type image
That's
than
amazing.
the demiurge image. And so that's why we're special, and that's why the demiurge hate us, because they were protected to watch us because we were in the source of them. And when that changed, when Anki made that change, it pissed off Enlil, and they fought over it. And I think that could be the galactic
That's
battle,
the
you
key
know.
to all of it. And ever
Right.
since then, part of that freedom is that they can't make themselves known until we choose the free will to, because that takes away our sovereign understanding and whatnot of it.
Yep.
Because then naturally a whole bunch of people are just going to worship them as gods instead of recognize their own godly power and their own connection to the actual source consciousness
Yep.
of God that each of us have within us, and have that spark that was given to us since then, and are then equal beings to the ones that created us from that time forward, sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's something that JJ Hertzog really stressed out. He said the hierarchy of the heavens is not from the top to the bottom, it's from the inside to the outside. And he stressed that very importantly, that these beings and that us, we're not here to hear higher and lower than each other. We're here to hear from the source. We emanate outwards. So when he said that, it really clicked to me like, okay, so Michael was the closest, so he was the closest, but he wasn't above Gabriel. He was just like Gabriel was further out than him, and so I think that's really a point to look at, because everything in this universe tries to get us to pick sides. Every institution, every organization, every country, they all try to get us to pick sides. It's one of the most common tactics to use us and to make us
Do you
sin
know
against each
why?
other,
Do you
because
know why?
it's
But the main thing, why do they all say you have to reach stillness, the balance, to then be able to meditate, to then connect to source? And as soon as you pick a side, as soon as you're put into that duality, that split, that divide, you can no longer go within yourself. That's all you need to have the divine connection to God, and you're just destroying ourselves and feeding that negative energy back into the demiurge, and in a way keeping us enslaved to them.
right. And that's what they want, that to keep this going on forever. That's why this topic that I'm researching is being suppressed. That's why giants, fallen angels, UFOs, all these things that are connected to this are being kept at the highest level secrecy. And we have tons of proof of that. You have Skinwalker Ranch, Project Bluebeam, all these government projects that they poured billions of dollars of our taxpayer money into this topic, yet it's not supposed to exist. Where's our money at? You know, like really, like this doesn't exist, and yet you're going to continue to research it. Like, where's the logic there? So we know for fact that there is obviously logic for them to know that this stuff has meaning. And you look at what Saddam Hussein was trying to do with the ziggurat and regenerize that or re-energize that. How they found the tomb of Gilgamesh just weeks before the United States decided to go in and invade Iraq. How the United States bombed tons of archaeological sites in Iraq when they definitely there was no threat to these sites, to my knowledge.
And they
So
continue to everywhere.
but what here's the big ticket item. Okay, we went into Iraq for what reason? Weapons of
Weapons of
mass
mass
destruction.
destruction, but they were demigod leftover weapons, like you have
Weapons
right
of
there.
mass destruction. That's what they found, and that's why they couldn't tell us because it's all a secret. Because if the other countries find out, then they're going to come get it, and there's going to be a war, and it's not going to be good, or something of that nature. I think there's real fear of this technology because whoever holds this technology is definitely in control, probably. And
Well, and
I
once
don't know
we
who owns it
actually
now,
figure it
but
out and activate it, if there's leftover from that
it
previous time,
it's not going to work right now because the magnetic sphere is the shield that blocks all of the valuable solar
oh
power. So
wow.
so they cracked the pyramids, they took off the caps, they put the magnetic sphere on, and they kept us trapped here forever. Or that's what they wanted, right? So we'd reincarnate and reincarnate, and we would never learn the truth. We would never set ourselves free because once we know that they're controlling us, we can obviously connect to God and have faith, and we already know the truth now, right? Once we find this stuff, we know the truth, or we have faith. And
Once
I
the
know it happened for
human
me.
consciousness resonates in harmony, then we will forever be connected to that conscious telepathic realm, like the 13th monkey sort of thing. And it's like once
Yeah,
we
yeah,
get that collective consciousness, then boom, right? That's
yeah.
that right
And that
there.
I think that happens to people with ego deaths and breakthroughs on DMT and other psychedelic
Absolutely.
substances. I felt it. I've seen it. And like you said, that you've seen that barrier when you exited your body. I hit that. I had the big red X, like you're not coming past here. And I mean, literally,
Like
like I hit a
exactly, like
wall.
you hit the spot, and it's like I also experienced it a couple different times when I was about to merge consciousness with another person telekinetically in that room, and it's like boom, it hit the same thing. And it's like, what's preventing that? And they talk about like the prison planet, this freaking space wall of whatever, and the soul trap, and the moon being like the thing that shoots the or lets the souls or consciousness in and out and goes to the Saturn back and forth, the ring maker.
Right, right. And that's a big one right there you just hit on. I think that has all to do with this magnetic field. The machine that they put against us, I think, has to do with the moon and the Saturn thing. Because if you look at the Cassini space probe and all this super good data we were supposed to get about Saturn, where's it at? I mean, this was back in the 90s. Where's our data on Saturn these days? Like, really, it's pretty skim, considering
I
what's
gotta add
public.
one more thing. What happened to the ice caps that used to cover Mars? What happened to the ice caps that used to cover the moon? They both used to have those, but hey, it's just global warming. Don't pay attention to the new white pulsar. Don't pay attention to the solar system. Why? Don't pay attention to any of that data. And oh, we're still looking for water on the moon and on Mars, yet we used to get images of the fucking ice caps on both of those. What do you mean it's not acknowledged that there's water on these places? You know, like
Yeah.
it's a huge disinformation uh, operation, and
Yep.
that most likely there's inhabitation of these different places still, or visitation, and maybe even breakaway human civilizations are also there, but it's being hidden from us still until we reach. And that's why it's the singularity again too, potentially,
Yep.
is. Oh, so is that how we
You heard the theory
launch
that
the
we're
singularity?
actually in a black hole?
Oh yeah,
So
exactly.
that's
And
a whole nother theory too that just kind of split my mind of you know keeping us on the edge of the galaxy and kind of a secret experimental zone, not wanting other extraterrestrial races and certain things to interfere with this project and experiment. I think is really valid things to look at is our location here and what they've discovered about our location with James Webb that's not really being talked about, but in terms of seeing beyond the Big Bang. What's interesting is, in Revelation, it talks about how there's this final war, this final Armageddon, and what's crazy is these universes or these eons of time could actually be, it expand for a period of time, right? Well, that eon could be like the age of Aquarius or the age that we're in now, and when it ends, it could actually be. This universe coming to an end. Like the reason we saw a flash of light
oh,
could be the
boom.
sword of Jesus hitting the fallen or whatever. Like that could be the end of that universe and the start of the next one. And that's why we can see it beyond it, right?
And the merging and converging of the different multiverses within that eon sort of thing too, and why we might be having all these supposed Mandela effects and all these other
Right.
things, is all these different realities coming together all at once
Because time's
before.
not real, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
time is only confined into this universe. So if a black hole is literally holding us here under all this gravity and pressure, they could have found a way to slow down the existence or something like that to where we experience time because we're trapped here. But the reality is that's just all. It could have been just a blink of an eye outside of this black hole.
Oh, absolutely it is. That's the scalability of this between third dimensional, fourth dimensional, and fifth dimensional, like conscious life. And then it's like our spirit or our soul is probably still like a fifth, of at least a fourth, definitely, most likely a fifth, and potentially a sixth dimensional entity and existence. And that we are trapped ourselves consciously, physically in this third, and that we can get to the fourth where we're thinking of, when you're on a higher vibration, right? You're thinking about others, you're planning, you're outside, and then you
Staring in
can
the
go
mirror.
out of body, and then you're on this fifth where you're actually transferring your your actual consciousness through time space, right? So
Right.
then you have that same existence and shows it, and that shows that we do exist on that level as well. But that we freely actually get into it when we dream, but you're not active in the physical, right? So it's that, how do you connect both to be physically conscious and active and alive while also connected with your higher dimensional self that exists in this higher level dimension of that infinite time space sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that hits a lot on the whole thing you were talking, how you have the demon and the angel, right? Just like the Fred Flintstone effect. And he always, oh, I'm gonna go to the lodge, or whatever. But I think there's real truth to that, and how deep that goes into this war over our souls is quite interesting because that pineal gland is what produces all of our hormones. It's what regulates them. I don't think it produces them, but the endocrine system is directly connected to the pineal gland, which produces them. And this endocrine system is really, really crazy. You start looking at these different effects, and then you bring it back to cannabis, and you look at the cannabis. Recently, they had a new finding of these things. They're a very minute amount. They're only prevalent in certain strains, and like GMO cookies, for instance, is one that has a lot of it. It's called a thiol, And these thiols are also found in garlic and skunk spray. Well, after growing and using cannabis for 20 years, I found that certain genetics would affect me in a really relaxing and good way that made me happy. And then when I'd have other genetics, I would be constantly chasing to get the other ones back. I always wanted the gas. I always called it the gas. It would always seem like these strains that had the gas. Well, turns out that there's this volatile sulfur compound called a thiol. And as I was researching in Chat GPT, asking it questions about thiols, I asked it about the plausibility of the thiol lifting the guise of the demiurge or causing a effect to your pineal gland to where it would do that. And what's crazy is a lot of people say that they smoke weed because it makes them sleep better. But indica sativa, people don't know the difference, and you could tell someone it's an indica, but it's a sativa. They're still going to sleep fine a lot of times. Well, that's because the thiols are actually protecting the pineal gland and regulating the things. And so, if you notice when you use cannabis, you don't dream as much. That's because it's directly
Big
related
time.
to this. Yeah,
Big
I
time.
mean, I don't get plagued by nightmares at all. I don't hardly dream at all. And people are always like, "How do you have all these pieces and not have nightmares?" And I completely accredit it to these thiols in the cannabis.
Oh, and that would also um, theoretically and realistically give you a when you're conscious as well protection of like outside what are often called
You
these
want to
body
meditate and do
snatchers,
good
but
music, you're going to need to smoke a joint
schizophrenia, the
first.
different, but like the different outside entities trying to enter in and take
Oh,
control
yeah.
of yourself, like the
A-
physical
And
body.
and if you look at what ancient cultures have done for thousands of years, what do they do to ward the area from demons and spirits? They burn incense. Well, guess what's in those incense in micro amounts? Thiols.
Ew.
Also, yeah, you
So
look at the skunk spray and then the garlic. What do vampires hate? Garlic.
garlic.
Thiols. Yep.
Wow.
I'm not saying vampires are real here, but I truly believe that
At
maybe
least
people
the
thought that these
energetic
Anunnaki
ones are
beings,
the
they might have
energetic
thought these
vampire.
Nephilims were, or maybe there was actual Nephilim type beings that were vampires. Maybe they were demonic type humanoids that were created by the Nephil. We don't know, but it is interesting because you go over to Bulgaria and like Transylvania and all those areas, and in Romania, there's actually caves that have these type of glyphs and stuff in there that we see on these pieces. And that lady, that archaeologist that reached out to me, she worked in Romania prior to going to Saudi Arabia, and because of the work she was doing in these caves, is how the sheik found her in the first place.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Do you mind showing us more of the different pieces and the different symbols and
I,
like one of the
I
most
want to show you this too.
fascinating? Oh yeah, your book huge and like this is
Th-
epic and it's
This
the
thing, man.
actual
I
research and
mean,
work.
it is so deep. I went extra hard on this one, and I'm still sore from it in the wrist because literally to edit all these photos and get all this in there, um, we went to town and really tried to give, a full disclosure within this book. But yeah, if you really want to study the glyphs and see the different languages and read about all these pieces, there's over
Oh my.
400 of my pieces documented in here. This is volume one, and I have volume two at my business partners. He's got over 1,000 pieces in his collection, and I have volume three at my other business partner. So we've all been doing this. We're going to have a stack of these books that people can have, and it's like having the museum in your house. You cannot find this on Sumerian and Egyptian artifacts. They don't do this because they want you to visit their museums. They do not publish this data in its entirety for a reason to keep us suppressed, and I'm changing that.
And that is one of the reasons why I love it is that you're trying to open source as much as that you can, and that you constantly are like you overcome the scrutiny. You do not hide from it. You're putting forward as much as you can, and that you're putting as much scientific method, as much testing to all of this as possible, as much documentation of the excavation and all of it as possible, and documenting, publicizing it so that people see it and can see that it is real, and it's not just coming out of some freaking Chinese 3D printer
Yeah.
like
Concrete. Yeah.
right. And yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't mind just showing some of the more
Yeah.
pieces with
Yeah.
both
You have to
the
switch camera. Oh, actually, that camera died here. Hang on. I can flip this one around still. It might not be as nice a quality, but oh yeah, it is dead. Okay. I still saw the picture when you switched over. I was like, wait a minute, this thing's still going. All right. Must mean it's getting late.
indeed, yes.
All
Oh my god, I gotta
right.
look at it
Walk
again.
around with my iPad here.
Amazing.
Sorry
Like,
if it's shaky. Guess I'm literally holding the
no
big tablet
museum
here.
would do this. They would charge you money to come in, and here Mike is giving away for free and sharing with the world so you can know that these things exist and their documentation coming out of the ground in Mexico next to the pyramids where it's all documented. But look at that. It's got Mesopotamian, Egyptian, elongated skulls, potentially
Reptilian.
rays, the reptilians, like Thoth. It's all in there.
It's so awkward trying to be backwards with this. Sorry if I'm trying to like get the right stuff on there, but it's all backwards. There's Thoth. You know what's interesting about this Thoth
Hmm.
though is he's very different looking, and I don't know if that is Thoth, but you can see it's like a scaled with a much longer beak. I've actually only seen this being on this piece. I've never seen it depicted that way on any others. This piece is really special. It's a 4 foot star map, and what's interesting is we these star maps. I'll show you a picture of them here. These have the night sky on there, and there's a sea. You can see the sea over on the left side. That represents the North Star. And so you can put that into the AI now, and it'll tell you when the last time the night sky was in this formation. And so we're getting some really interesting dates and AI translations of these objects. Um, so if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you can go to our website, and there's tons of pictures on there that you can take and put into AI if you're curious about them and you want to ask questions about them. And then we have a subreddit, Alien Carvings, and you can post your translations and the stuff that you get from there. And we're trying to keep a database of as many translations and as many um, ideas about asking AI different questions about these pieces, compiling.
Hold on,
You
hold
know,
on. You got to go back to that bottom one because it's what looks like the Babylonian sort of thing, but it also kind of actually looks more like what you just showed before, depicted as Thoth. So is that actually Thoth depicting with the handbag and the pine
no,
cones potentially? No?
no, I think the bird was a different being. It talks about the avians that were divine messengers and helpers. I believe that's their relation. Now, if you look at in the Hindu, there's a being named. I'm gonna try to the Hindu. I butcher it always. It's not Brahma, but it's a bird-headed being that looks very similar to Horus and Thoth, and so I think we see this being in some of these pieces. But no, Thoth is usually really exemplified. I'm trying to find a piece that he's on here right now. But then we also have, this is another good example here. This guy, I mean, it could be Thoth as well, but
Right? Yeah.
he's a very different pointed face. Could be set. We don't know. There's obviously a lot of this stuff is older than Egypt. So we
Right?
have
That's what makes it so crazy is it's like literally the pre-cataclysm stuff. It's the precursor to all of these
yeah.
it's the foundry. It's showing exactly what it should be. It's like slightly different, but like what ties it all together, and it's literally depicted in all of these. It just
Are you
blows my
familiar with the
mind.
Gosford glyphs?
Well, yes, I am in Australia, and
Yep.
they also tie in perfectly.
Not only that, there's a symbol on the the one side that absolutely looks like a UFO. And if you look at these pieces, I'm trying to find, well, I can show you on there, kind of, but they has this similar type of UFO on the Gosford glyphs. Now, what's interesting there also is that the Gosford glyphs are written in a proto hieroglyphic language. So that's kind of, really bizarre, because how did these Egyptian guys get to Australia 5,000 years BC or whatnot? That's this doesn't make sense at all. And
But
they say it was a
it
storm
does
or
when you
whatnot,
tie
but
in such things as the Crespi collection that
right.
also has these same proto languages and tablets with depicting the exact same things.
This is not safe for work, so I apologize, but I wanted to show this because it's very important. Not only is it made of glass, okay, but this is obsidian. This is not your standard glass. This will scratch with a
That's
metal knife.
obsidian?
This is obsidian, bro, blue or
That's
green obsidian.
chemical obsidian green glass. Wow.
Yeah, it's completely clear. Like you can see through it in a level. There's no air bubbles. I mean, this is the most beautiful piece of glass I own. I have other pieces that weigh like 50 and 60 pounds of this material. These are found in Guerrero and Mikokan. But if you look at this, they're aliens and humans having sex. And this is like a big orgy. I mean, there's a phallus in that lady's mouth right there, if you can see it. Um, and I mean, it gets down and dirty as we'll flip around here. I'm not trying to gross anybody out, but I
And
find
if
that
you
that
held
the
that, if you
holding their
position that
hair and
over a
stuff. I mean,
candle, it would probably project that creation story image up, would it not?
it does. Yeah, you can actually put the images on the wall. Oh man, but
How
yeah,
do you pass knowledge down to keep telling the story? Well, that
well,
is the perfect artifact to show it and highlight it, no?
yeah, and they have these too. Like I don't know if can you see this right now?
No, would just
Maybe
blow.
maybe
Oh,
not.
we see half. Oh,
Here, I'll bring it around. I can't see. Oh yeah, it was turned too far down. Well, this here, you can see it's a cutout. If you put this in front of the fire,
oh,
you can tell a
oh.
story. It'll put the shadow on the wall.
Is this the tools that were used in Plato's cave and shadow?
Could be. It could very well be, or at least the inspirations of
Or
some of
what
that. And
was known and used before the new rewriting from the laws of Plato's, I forget
yeah.
the exact name there, but exactly that. And that they're metaphorically still doing it to us today.
Hmm.
Look at that thing. That's
Yeah, and so these. Sorry for I grabbed it on the wrong side. I'm a lefty, but these mirrors in this obsidian. So the Toltec elder Max, that he's one of the guys down there that allowed me to start filming, and he started doing things to get this through to the right channels, because obviously the guys were pulling these items out of the ground, but they didn't want to be recognized for it. They didn't want to be known because it's illegal, right? Even though they don't admit that it's real, it's still not something that you want to get caught doing down there.
100%.
You know, but he decided to put his life on the line. He decided to put his name on the line. He allowed me to publish his story in my book, Anunnaki America. I have some textbooks that I published as well that go into these stories and certain things of my story, um, that talk about this. But I mean, he was instructed by his father how to use these obsidians, and so he'll take one of the conch shells, he'll take one of the crystal skulls, he'll take a black obsidian tablet looking thing, and he'll take a pendulum, okay, and he'll do a weird thing. He'll burn all the copal resin and things of that nature, and he does a sacred blessing and asks for the guidance of the eagles to show him where these pieces are. And most of the guys use GPR and metal detectors. Metal detectors work on these pieces, even though they're limestone, because of the orange color. It has iron oxide in it, and so that's what I was accustomed to seeing when I seen guy busting out this scrying dish or whatever with a pendulum. I'm just like, Yeah, that's gonna work,
Right?
you
Like
know.
what gives me the heebie-jeebies is everything you just mentioned, all those same artifacts. Literally 20 years ago, when I was like first getting into and before things were too censored and expunged on the internet, I watched some videos of actual the Golden Dawn or something like that doing the
Oh
ritual
yeah, that's
of
Aleister Crowley.
summoning, and it was through those freaking tools. And it was like when that thing
Yeah.
arrived, like it was like an earthquake, and the fucking energy transferred through like the internet and through your speaker that's like crappy and shouldn't be putting through that sort of like force, but you felt it. And you can't find these videos anymore, and it's the same tools that are mentioned and described and used in the spiritual alchemy side of things. And it keeps adding up, and it's wild.
Aleister Crowley's work becomes more and more interesting every day because he was obviously heavily involved with the Golden Dawn and that type of magic societies. And but yet what he came out with in his books, um, looking back now, I mean, it's really it's quite insane. I'm not saying that he was right or that, but we wouldn't have Scientology if it wasn't for Aleister Crowley. L. Ron Hubbard was directly inspired, and L. Ron Hubbard, Walt Disney, people from NASA, they would all go out into the Californian or Arizonan deserts with Aleister Crowley, and he would do occult magic and practices with them. So I think that a lot of the things that we see,
And
like
they're the ones that are doing the mass media, the spell bounding, the projection, the predictive programming, the new casting of
look
spells.
look at
And
look at Walt Disney and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, okay? And you take these guys and you look at what they've predicted and what they've come out of place with, and um, some of the things like ET, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I mean, come on, Nazca mummies, like this shit hits home hard. We found a depiction that looked just like Alf. Okay, it was a large statue that looked just like Alf. I mean, the sci-fi things of the xenomorphs and other things that we found. There's no
can you
accident
quickly
here.
show a
This,
few more? Could quickly show us
yeah,
a
yeah,
few
yeah,
more
of
of those
course.
the
Yeah,
xenomorphs and stuff for those just joining in. It's absolutely wild. And
look at
right,
this. This has like the xenomorph on the back of it, and it's just it's stuff that you see in sci-fi that you would not believe if it was real. But what if they were trying to cover up the truth? So they were going to use the psyop or sci-fi to put images in people's minds of, oh, this is an alien, this is from outer space, this isn't real, this has nothing to do with God, this has nothing to do with religion, this has nothing to do with the stuff that it actually does have to do with. And so I believe that,
it's not even real. Your intuition
it is
isn't
real.
even a thing. Don't even trust in what yourself is telling yourself or connecting to the higher self. No, reality, surrender to the spells that we are casting on you, right? It's like, and
Right.
divide and conquer, be polarized, fight each other constantly, never be at peace.
You see the patina on a piece like this,
Instant,
and
a instant verification of age, right? Like, can't
I don't
we?
think this is new, and you look at this bracelet right here. This one for me was so beautiful. The patina on it, and I haven't got these XRF yet. I mean, some of them I have, but not this specifically because this one looks like it might have some silver or some other component in there other than
It,
just
it,
copper. It could be
it does.
tin,
It looks.
but that right there, all that black that you see, that's all manganese deposits. So, I mean, definitely proof that it's been there for over 700 or 800 years. And those manganese deposits take a while to form. And there was a guy that commented on the post there that when we found that coffin, and that coffin had some black on the lid, and he's like, "Well, how did the dirt get in there?" Well, if it was a flood, it would obviously have filled up, and it could have gotten some there, but there's also manganese deposits that look black on there. It looks like dirt, but it's manganese, I believe. So we'll know for sure tomorrow. But as far as the question on the pre-dynastic, these pieces range in age from when the Spanish came all the way back to like 18,000 BC. So the oldest definitive date we have from a resin sample in a pipe is 12,600 years. And I just sent over to Italy a bone that was found here in Tula, and it'll give us our first bone definitive date if we get it done. And that should give us a real idea of when, when this region was inactive, because right now those 18,000 year carbon dates and the 12,000 year carbon dates are coming from Abuelos de Lisco, which those pieces look a lot different, and they depict things. I was going to find something that shows it here a little better, but here, this is a good call. And so we believe that this stuff from Abuelos might actually be older than the stuff from Tula, or vice versa, but it seems like it might be um, slightly older, and you can just see the construction styles more. I mean, it's a lot different for sure. The materials are different, but yet the
It's
depictions are
more
very similar.
advanced the further back it goes, as it always seems to be. And it's like this
Right.
was the demigods and the giants and everything else. And then afterwards was the resets where there was the king's list. And then after that, there was the fleeing of the last survivors after they were overthrown and the exodus, but it
Right.
was actually humans made them exit from there. They then went and resettled in Peru, where there was the last of them. That's why it would give you more or newer dating up until the uh, reinhabitation with the rest of the genocide of the last remaining bloodlines of this genetic elongated skull
Yeah,
being
the Crusades.
humanoid.
And it talks, there's rumors in Brazil, there's rumors in Mexico about giants still existing. Um, so it's yeah, absolutely on that question on the writing. There's multiple types of writing. Now with AI and these new models, there's absolutely translations and things, certain symbols that are able to be translated, um, ideas of what they might say in entirety based off of those symbols and how other symbols interact with it. But none of these languages are identical to the ones that we have, and that's not unexpected. Obviously, Anki and Enlil were fighting, and they mess with the languages a lot in the tablets over there in Sumeria. It talks about, and I believe that likely, we have, I think, 5 or 8 different versions of cuneiform that we know of. And that doesn't include the proto languages, that doesn't include the Sinaitic languages or anything of that nature that still has some reference or revelation to those languages. So I think that we're going to see, that Egyptian, Sumerian, all these languages had a precursor, and that this is it.
And it will be the original language that was before the time of Babel, where we got the technology of God and then taken away.
And Awelos is like that. Okay, Awelos, the language is very consistent. It's all the same. But after Awelos, after the Younger Dryas period, we get different languages. We get these Phoenician, we get all these different types of languages on these pieces. That definitely, I mean, some look like Sumerian, some look like Egyptian, but then this here is not, and there's some of the letters from our language in there, but very different. And that's kind of how that goes. But like this type of stuff in the AI right now, you're able to get pretty good translations, and I think within the next couple of years we'll have full
Oh,
definitive
it's fully
translations.
gonna help crack the code and
Yeah.
completely verify that there's no way that these things can be forged. And it's like it's
Guess what? I got some really great news. So a team of PhDs has been working on this heavily, and I reached out to them a lot when I first got into this. They kind of ignored me, right? I don't blame them. I'm just some guy from Washington trying to figure this out, right? But they called me today and they said that oh, my phone's dead. I'd read you the message, but they said that on May 5th, they wanted to have a meeting, that they needed an hour of my time, and they appreciate my patience and appreciate my work, and that they have definitive, retestable, confirmable, chemical, scientific proof that these are from antiquity, and that is something that is I'm not sure if it's peer reviewed yet, but he says it will be, or it's. I mean, there's at least 4 or 5 PhDs in this, so I don't know if that constitutes it being peer reviewed or if it has to be submit after that. But this data is repeatable and is something that I believe will be peer reviewed.
That's
So
absolutely
May
epic.
5th, May 5th, we'll Cinco de Mayo, we're gonna know, and stay tuned because I'll probably try to do a live or do something to explain that and
What
get it
day
out
is
there.
that?
So
And what's the date for next Wednesday?
no.
Are you free on Wednesday? And we'll have you back for that update because I believe that will be after the 5th. Yes, it absolutely will be.
Yep.
And we'll have you back for Woo Woo Wednesday. And and that will be our 20th episode together. This is the 19th. So for those like that haven't been following or that are new to this, Mike constantly comes on. Like, you've overcome so many criticisms, and as well, you keep paying to get more tests done that always keep coming back, never debunking, but always well. So
Yep.
you acknowledge when you've been sold a fake, you identify it, you remove it, and then it's like you have all of the originals that now you're very easily able to identify what's original, and that they don't even try really selling you fakes anymore because
We know the
I-
stone types to expect, and they don't have access to these stone types anymore. Like this limestone with this type of iron deposit in here with the calcite and the quartz being so perfect where it has this phosphorescence and things. I really think that they don't have access to it. You can't just go get this. You have to query this type of stone out of the ground in big blocks. And I mean, to get this much of it, we've documented over 15,000 pieces. You'd have to have one heck of a source. So either they're mining this, and this is something done by the cartels at a level that none of us have ever even imagined, which I'm not going to look like you say, you have to remain somewhat skeptical. I have enough proof to where I've sold myself on this, but there's what ifs of even we're real. I always tell that to people, like the flat earth people, like, yeah, it's possible we're in a simulation and that we're walking on a flat earth. I don't know. Like, but from what I see in the physics that we've perceived, that's not true, right? But there is
exactly.
still an open mind here to think that, okay, well, maybe these people went above and beyond what we could see and feel and touch, and are thinking about this other. So, open mind here is the biggest takeaway. I have had, like you said, you had to overcome all this stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, keeping an open mind because I saw something, and there's just things here that I'm a lapidary guy. I've collected stones and rocks my entire life. Never seen nothing like none of this stuff. I mean,
Right,
I've
like,
asked these people are like, oh, you can get that from any artisan, and I'm like, okay, yeah, could you please give me his
no,
number? I'd
no,
like
you
to get
can't.
it.
Just
Nobody.
like anyone with their Egyptology degree will tell you that any slave can build these freaking impossible to build even
Pyramids and
now sort
stuff.
of
Yeah.
fear, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's
So it's interesting, and so this limestone, how it's very specific and special with the metamorphic traits and abilities, you have to wonder if they weren't making this limestone. And
and
you have to
that
wonder
is
if they
why
weren't
I
making the
say
pyramid blocks.
geopolymer, and that I bet you it's going to be, and it's going to be limestone, it's going to be sandstone, and then it's also going to be the basalt and we've
Calcite.
been through one, uh, and that stuff is called scaliola.
Oh,
Scaliola is the geopolymer form of granite and of basalt. That is the method and the science of it, and that it's like it's metamorphic, and we try to claim it needs all this heat and pressure and all this stuff, but it's like, no, actually it was just a soup of like salt water, of the silica, of the monoatomic elements, and then it's a chemical reaction that creates those chemical bonds, which
right.
then makes it, and you're pouring it as concrete. So yes, they might have mined it from mountains a couple hundred miles away, but it wasn't this 10,000-pound block that they had to carry. No, it was in bags of freaking dust that they took and then mixed and remade. And then when you see all these ancient sites all over the world, with new eyes and understanding, and then it's like, oh, that all these straight lines and corners, that's the form that they poured the geopolymer into, and it's lasted with the impressions of those forms all these tens of thousands, maybe even millions of years. But then you also have that same amount of time of natural erosion going on to it. So yes, they've been weathered for a while, but no, it's not a natural formation.
The biggest question that I have on this theory, on the antithesis side of it, is okay, how do they pour it, and how do they get it into that shape? Did they have some mold that was that large?
Well,
Or like
a
the ones that
sack.
if you look,
It's like it's paper thin, right? All you would
how did you
need.
get it to stand up there and hold the sides and stuff, right? You have to hold all this liquid to where it would
Yeah.
dry.
How do you pour concrete today? You nail you.
But these are much bigger. And then you go into Peru and down there in Cusco and stuff with all these weird 18-sided cuts and things. Like there's more technology here than just pouring. And that's I
Yeah.
think it's the same with these
So you're
carvings, you
actually,
know?
that's a good point, and that's the ones that are even furthest down, right? So it's like I think the geopolymer was like the second survivor, or like the second level after like the whatever the biggest physical gods came, that made the mountain pyramids that are all over, that made the fucking underground tunnels, the
Yep.
mountain cities, all the crazy stuff. However they did it, then it was like the survivors next that ground it down and were able to reform it in
Passed down
geopolymer
recipes. That's
way.
why the stonemasons hold the secret of the stone today, probably,
Yeah.
and why they're contacted to build the Washington Monument still, even in modern times. I'm at 6%. I'm just letting you know. We'll
Absolutely.
probably have to
And
wrap this up
this, we're
soon.
almost at 2 hours. This is absolutely epic. We will plan on Woo Woo Wednesday, have you back. We'll also have Hans, which I believe you've known, and will be excellent to add
Cool.
even more into it. And bless you, brother. Thank you. And absolutely epic, my friends. I look
Until
forward.
next time.
Much love.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
And thank you, brother.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just Bernie! Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?
Weekend at Bernie's.